Morty. We've got to turn the project in early.
Hey everyone, how are we doing? Welcome to Stats 01 Weekly Review. If you're in the chat, feel free to say hi. Who all is here right now? We're going to start by talking about some project. But if you have a question, you get to ask the question. You get to choose where we go. Maybe it's like, hey Brian, chapter 14, chapter 15. What does this mean? What is this concept? If you're here, feel free to say hi. We are live right now. I've got the project booted up and ready to go though. Woo! A lot of project grading up coming up here soon. Let's go take a look at the project. Here we go. So the project is due next week. So that's what we're talking about this week. We will do a review. Probably next week's review session will be mainly doing the project. It's very similar to your first project. Please look over how you got graded on your first project. A lot of the grades on this project are very similar. Like if you did really well on the first project, probably on the right track for this project. If you didn't do so well on the first project, let me know. I'll also be sending out an email here. I think one of the things we can do is try to use this project grade to help with the previous project grade. So really getting the understanding of how to write a good project is very important. So I'll be sending out some update emails about how important this project is and how basically I'm going to allow people to earn back part of their previous project grade. So take a moment right here. Start working on this project, take a look at it. If you have questions, let me know. A few people have already been emailing me, say, hey, Brian, I'm working on the project. I'm stuck at this point. It's the same data sets from before. So we're just looking at the JUMP data sets right here, like the student data set. Let's hop into JUMP. Is it with the license? Nope, we're good. Oh, it's my other computer, I think, maybe where the license is saying you need to update your JUMP license. And once a year, I need to update it. So we're looking here at the student data right here, and let's start looking at the questions for this. Hop back over here, some questions. Here we are. Let's go down here to the prompt and the documentation. So prompt, where's the file? Project 2 instructions, download instructions, open up instructions. Here we go. We'll change the dates right here and scroll on down. So prompt, same prompt. You've been working for the company again. Same company. You can use a different data set or the previous data set. So once again, we have the same 3 key tasks here that you're going to list. You know, what are you doing? What's the point? What did you find? And then also, what are your executive decisions right here? What do you think we should do as a company? If you look at how the points are divided up, please look at the grading key also. Notice right here, you'll make a decision tree. You'll do a 1 sample T, which we should be about doing 1 sample T right now. So if you're watching this video, you probably know what a 1 sample T is. Go down here, you got a 2 sample T, and then you have future research and neatness. So there's not a lot to this project. I mean, there's a good bit of analysis. Your main analysis portions are going to be on the decision tree, the 1 sample t-test, which is testing 1 mean, and then this is the difference between two means right here. So it's a 2 sample t-test. And we'll go over how to do some of these, especially next week, or if you're in the chat right now, feel free to have a question and we'll answer it. But one of the important things to know right here is when you are doing the project, this is how to make an A. The way to ensure you're making an A is going down to this grading key. When you're doing something like the decision tree, interpretation of R squared. So when you interpret the R squared, I got to change where it says display issue with graphic. Let's change that. Let's edit this. So display issue with graphic, where we're going to make some changes right here. Display issue with graphics, full marks, correct interpretation given, some missing interpretation. So let's say here, close interpretation. So now we've changed that, just copying wrong. So some details are missing from interpretation. Right here, decision tree most and least likely individuals. So it explains in the project. Explain the most and least likely group to have the characteristic you are interested in. So we need to do a categorical variable or a high quantitative variable you can do. And if you explain it well, you get all the points. If you have some details missing, you get some of the points. And if you have missing pictures, you also lose some points. But if you look right here, this is how the decision tree points are lined up. These are the 20 points you're earning. So you need to go through here and say, did I explain the characteristics well for the most and least likely group for the characteristic I'm interested in? When you go down here to the 1 sample T, you're going to go right here. Make sure you have your output. Creation of summary statistics and 1 sample T output with confidence interval and test. So you need to have your confidence interval, your test, and display all that in your report. All components are displayed. 1 picture is missing, you'll lose points. 2 pictures are missing, or if you don't have anything. Confidence interval right here. Confidence interval explain to the reader. If you explain it well, you get all 3 points. So make sure you know how to explain those confidence intervals. If there's issues with your interpretation, but you give an interpretation, you get 1 point. If you don't do it, you get 0 points. I literally go through here and click these buttons for the points you get. So I read through and I'm like, oh, they did a good job explaining that. And I just click 3 points right there. So that's the great thing about having rubrics. Next, we see interpretation of t-test range. Oh, that's the range button. I was like, t-test range. Interpretation of t-test. Test results will be explained to the reader. Did you explain the test results? Did you explain them well? Did you miss some key details, like talking about the p-value and if we reject the null or fail to reject the null? Why do we reject the null? Make sure to, I always say, go more on your words. If I'm like, I don't know if they get this. If they say, I reject the null, I'm like, well, you didn't tell me why. You didn't quote a value. We should always say, like, I reject the null at this level of alpha, and here's my p-value. This means I have evidence for the alternative, or I do not reject the null at this level of alpha. Here's my p-value, which is above 0.05, usually alpha. And I did not find evidence for my alternative, and then kind of maybe say what the alternative is. The more details you give, just think about writing a little bit extra, the more like you are to land here. The less details you give, the more likely you are here. But then if you don't give any details, I'm not like, doesn't have to be everything. It just has to show good communication to land over here. But you can always just kind of make a little bit more sure. And if you make a little error, I'm usually like, sometimes I'll put a note and be like, actually, it means this, but I might still give you full points. Because I understand sometimes people are like, I don't want to write too much because I'll make a mistake. But it's all right. It's better to show what you know and make a little error, and then we can correct it. And usually I'm a little bit more forgiving on this area if you write more. Right here, you can see you're going down into the 2-sample t-test. And once again, please look at the rubric and be like, okay, display the results of a 2-sample t-test. So run the test, then display those results. If you don't display the graphic properly or display all the images within it, the output you get, you will fall over here. If you don't do it, you fall over here. And if you do it, you fall over here. Make sure you have everything and give the numeric backing, not just the graphic. You need the numbers in your report because we'll actually use them down here. 2-sample t, null and alternative without using statistical notation. Explain the null and alternative hypothesis to the reader. Do you explain it well? Do you have some errors? Did you use statistical notation but not do it? Or did you just not do it at all? So just some options right there. Sometimes someone goes outside and I have to put like a different mark, but sometimes people don't go by the rubric I created. Interpretation of the results to the reader. Make sure you interpret them well. If you got some errors, if you don't really go into details, you're like, I reject the null. And I'll be like, why? Why do you reject the null? Is it because your p-value is low? What does p-value low being mean? What is a low p-value? It's below alpha. What's alpha? And don't worry. Once again, I try to be nice. So the more details you give, the better. So try to give more details. Be like, using an alpha of 0.05, which is our general rejection rate, I reject the null because my p-value of 0.03 is less than alpha. And that's very clear to the reader. Just we reject the null when the p-value is low. When the p-value is high, just let that null fly. Don't reject it. Future research, right down here in the future research, you need to give a new idea that the report did not go into. So you could elaborate, or if you go back through previous stuff where it's not well connected, you'll end up here. Overall neatness, most people get the full points here. I have clicked this every once in a while if the report starts to look a little like pictures are and text is really, I don't know, big or small. Some people have landed over here for neatness. It's pretty common people land over here. Free points. We all love free points. Free points are good points. And over here we have the executive summary. A lot of people lose points in the executive summary. You want to make sure you clearly state what you're doing, what your objective is. You want to make sure you go through the results. A lot of people get hit for the too few. This is probably one of the most common areas to lose points right here is with the too few. So a lot of people just don't elaborate nearly enough on their results. I want to reiterate again, with the executive summary, the point of the executive summary is someone reads your executive summary and that's the whole report. I know you're like, well, what's the point of the report? Well, it's like the long version. It's like, you ever read a Cliff Notes? The Cliff Notes meant to tell you the whole book, but you don't get all the real details, the fine details. The Cliff Notes is the executive summary of our report. And so if someone was like, can you just give me the overview of everything I need to know? They'd read the executive summary and they'd get like, okay, who's this for? What did we find out? And what are we going to do from this? Now the report will elaborate and give them the graphics, give them the backing. Because if someone says, can I see the full report? Because I don't know if we really have the backing to do this. You'd be like, yeah, we did a full analysis here, but this is just our general takeaways and everything and why we're doing this. And these are the actions we are creating from this, from the data we found. So the executive summary is like the condensed. It's like those little Gatorade packets, like little Gatorade packet. And then you got like the 64-ounce Gatorade down here where you just got to be like, oh, so much Gatorade. I don't know, analogies. but we have to give both. That way someone could read the condensed version of our report, which oftentimes people want, especially in business. Someone's like, you got a 20-page report you want me to read? Can you give me the executive summary of that? Like, give it to me on a 1 page. So this will really help with communication right here, being concise, which I'm not being right now. I'm not giving a good executive summary. You ready? Let's do it. Executive summary of the executive summary gives you the whole report quickly with what is this for? Like, who did we create this for? What did we learn from the data analysis? And then what action are we going to take? And that's an executive summary of the executive summary. Well, what questions are there? Who's watching live? Who do we have here right now? We are streaming, right? Always the thing I'm wondering about. I'm like, so what are we streaming? Yeah, we got a bunch of people watching. Who's here? Say hey in the chat. It says we got 5 people watching. Might have heard me talking in the background there. Who do we have in the chat? If you're in the chat right now, feel free to say hey. Hopefully that helped you. That was the first like 10 minutes, but pick where to go from here. Floor is open. Are you working on an assignment? Are you like, hey, that assignment 14, assignment 15 is really tough. I might hop in and do one of the most recent homework or quizzes. It's your call. I can just go ahead and work in a homework, work a quiz. And I do want to say, because the quizzes and homeworks are getting tougher, you can hop into a office hours at any time. Hey, what's up, Elizabeth? What's up, Ashling? So good to see you here. Asling, right? Asling? Sorry if I'm saying it right correctly. Feel free. Let's throw some points. Mubot's in the chat, giving out those points. What do you want to talk about? What concepts? My Monday is going well. Thank you, Elizabeth, so much. Hopefully that helps with the report. And I've got some ideas. Let's talk about some ideas right here. So the test was pretty tough, but there were some really good grades on the test. And I'll probably send this email out later tonight. What would people think if we put a curve on test 2? What would people think about that? We put a little curve on test 2? How's that sound, everybody? I was going to see who we had in the weekly review and kind of throw out these ideas. Please, Asling says, please, let's do that. You say, come here on Monday, get some good news. And thank you everyone who swings by these reviews right here so we can kind of talk over things. Let's make a plan right here. You ready? Let's make a plan of action for the end of the semester. Let's do this. So, number 1, plan to do well in Stat Tool 1. Last 2 weeks. You gotta have that last 2 week plan, okay? 1, start project now. Because it will count for half the points you lost on project 1. So here's what I'm gonna do. Always down for a curve. A, throw the curve on, make it 98, make it 105. I'm not saying you made that. I don't know. Someone's like, oh, no, yeah, I'll take a curve too. Any curve is good curve. Unless you're curving the grades lower. But does this make sense right here? If you made, like, let's say project 1 didn't go your way, you didn't do it. Made a 0. What could you make up to now? So you're gonna get half your points back. So this is an opportunity for somebody. It's not like, oh, you could just skip project 1. You probably still didn't want to skip project 1. So someone made a 0 on project 1. Technically, what's the easiest calculation for what they could make now? Like, let's say they make 100 on project 2, which is very obtainable. Please, if you're watching this and you did bad on project 1, project 2 is even more valuable now to you than ever. So what would this mean for you? You can make a 50. With the 100 on project 2, you now have a 50, which you might say, oh, 50, that's so bad. If I said, here's $50, you wouldn't be like, why is it not 100? You'd be like, oh, $50, that's awesome. I can go buy a Coca-Cola. I don't know how much Coca-Cola costs anymore. But this will really help out right here. So if you didn't do well on project 1, this is the opportunity to make up half the points. If you made let's say made an 80, made an 80, I think it's correct grammar, with the 100 on project 2, you now have an 80. Does this make sense right here? This is a huge opportunity to increase your grade. So it's thundering outside. Thunder. Thunder, thunder. Oh. Weird noises. So the other big thing we're going to do too is also curve on test 2. I'm going to look over it probably somewhere between, More than 3 points. I'm gonna take a look. If we turn early, we can get feedback for corrections. Exactly. Email me, and I'll try to be as quick as possible. I'll give a general. I generally look over it for about 30 seconds because I get a lot of emails for it. So you think every minute I look at it, I probably get like 50, 60 emails. Every minute I look is an hour of time. So including reply. So if I were to look at everyone's project for 5 minutes, that'd be like 5 hours of a day, which is a good portion of like workday, like just reviewing projects. So even a 5-minute review, which seems kind of quick, so please email me and I'll give a quick look. And I've told, so Elizabeth, did you email me about the first project? Do well on the first project, which the good news is if you did well on the first project and you had a strategy, like you watched the videos, you emailed Brian, he gave you some feedback, said, hey, change this, and this. I literally just scroll through your project and see if I see major things. And I try to give you the biggest major things first. If I tell you it looks pretty good, then you're probably in a pretty good range. Like I can generally get an idea looking through projects I've looked through. Thousands over the years, tens of thousands at this point, maybe. Yeah, at least thousands. Yeah, I don't know. Last semester I looked through a couple hundred, like 600. Yeah. Anyways, a lot of projects over the years. So if you did well on project 1, just keep doing what you're doing. Keep doing what you're doing. So what else? I want to send an email out to the students who are doing really well. Does anyone here feel like they're doing really well and have an A right now? I know we got 2-3 people interacting in the chat right now, but do you feel like, let's say, email to top students? What has helped you be successful? I want to ask them. I'll probably send that out here a little later. Please reply to that. I'll send it out to the whole class. But I truly believe a few things probably are doing it. 1, Ace My Pearson. 2, Ace Canvas content. What else? Doing well, but that might have changed based on this project. Oh, wait, the project's not in yet, Ellis. Ellis, hey, that's doing great. I think you'll do well on the project. Just start early, ask questions. You'll be fine. Hey, Brian, I don't know how to make this decision tree. Brian, what does this t-test result mean? Just when you're stuck, just email. I get so bummed, like, asynchronous learning is a lot tougher. So don't make it asynchronous. Email me. Swing by these office hours. Swing by the regular office hours. And just be like, which we have had some people jump into the office hours, say, hey, Brian, I'm stuck on this homework assignment. I'm stuck on this quiz. Can you work it? And the answer is yes. Who's stuck on my Pearson right now? Let's do one my Pearson at least. Let's put this here. Plan. Swing by live office hours. Get help on problems you're stuck on. I know someone in the chat right now, I'm doing a cold read. Someone in the chat is stuck on my Pearson question. They say, I don't understand this one. Didn't do well as I hoped on the first exam, so I'm working hard to finish strong. Awesome. I'm done with the project. Email the project. Yeah, you just emailed it to me? I'll definitely take a look later. Thank you, Ellis. I will take a look, and I'll tell you this much. Some people do so well on the project, especially, and I'll just grade it right then and there. I've graded some people's project when they email it to me and they say, hey, Brian, I've been working on this. And then I say, you're good. And I just input that grade. I'm like, you got 107, turned it in early. So that's a good way to get something off your plate and be like, done with project, that portion of my grade's in, good to go. So do a cold read right now. Someone in the audience is watching right now and they're working on my Pearson problem and they say, I can't do it. Is that person you? Is that you? Who is it? Who's in the audience right now? Some psychic cold reading right here. I don't know. That's how I'm using myself. We'll hop over to the main screen. Let's take a look. The main screen radio. It is your call what we cover, what we review right now. So if you have a question, let me know. We can do my Pearson if you want. It is your call. What shall we do? You know what I can do, Ellis? I could review it. If you want me to, yes or no, Ellis. I won't show it on the screen, obviously, but I could, well, no, I'll email you back if you want. I was going to go look at the email right now if you wanted. But since we're live on the internet, but like I don't have my screen behind me. Unless I want to make my screen appear. Watch this magic. Boop. It can be a real screen. It's a TV. It's just a TV. That's all it is. It's a real TV behind me. There's nothing crazy going on right here. Hey everyone, welcome to Stat to One. How are you doing this morning? Right? It's long hair Brian, he's back. Should just start a stream with that. Hair's not here anymore though. What questions are there? Your call, where we go, what we do. What questions are there? We'll see. We got a plan for the rest of the semester. If you're wondering, hey, my Pearson, hey, you can talk about the project more or any of the material. We'll see what questions people have. Let's see. I'm gonna take a look. Will there be opportunities to further raise our grades? I think these are our key opportunities right here. Let me show them again in the background. The key opportunities right here are going to be the following. Project 2 is going to be a huge opportunity to increase your grades. So start the project now. We're going to put a curve on test 2. Or the assignments posted are final. Yeah. The previous grades you have, like on my Pearson assignments, those are not really going to change. But really it comes down to, preparing for test 3. And I really want to hear from people who have been doing well. I'm going to email the top % of students and say, like, what's your strategy? And maybe they say, I've been going back over the modules, or I've been, watching extra videos that are on the channel. I want to hear from them and get their ideas of what's helping them be successful. But I would say this is the plan to be successful right here. Like, to be successful, I would follow down this path. I'd be starting my project now, especially if I didn't do well in the first project, because Brian's going to do it's not like you could just skip to the first project, but this is a huge increase for those people who missed the first project. Or if you did poorly, like if you made like a 60, it just didn't click. Did I do that correctly? Huh. Oh, yeah, well, maybe I'm at 60 there. You'd have an 80 if you made a 60. So you can pull up your project 1 grade. So project 2 is super important. Start project 2 as soon as possible. The curve on test 2 right here, I'm going to look at the grades, figure out a curve. We do sometimes curve them during the semester. So you're going to see a grade improvement there. I'm going to send an email to the top students and ask them what has helped you be successful. I'm going to let them just tell me, but I really want to hear from them. So if you're hearing this now, you're one of the top students, feel free to put it in the chat. But I want to know from them what's going to help them, what has helped them be successful in this class, and hopefully other people can follow that path. I know it's a little bit late, but especially exam 2, I think is where we see the biggest changes, because exam 1, it's a little bit easier. It's not like super easy. Don't worry if you did, they're tougher exams, but I think exam 2 is where we get that bump. And because exam 2 is a lot of new material. Exam 1 has like mean, median, mode, histograms, like modality and that kind of stuff. And then exam 2, you're breaking into topics that are not usually covered in high school, or people might not have heard of, like sampling methods and things like that are new. So it's like, okay, now we got a bunch of new material, and the grades sometimes shift, and that not as good. Swing by office hours live like you're doing right now. So if you're watching this live or later, but you can always ask questions here live. Anything else? What are people thinking in the chat? What are people thinking? It is your call. Put on a little more music here. You can always ask any material question, or let's see what Mubot sees. He sees the future. Let's see what people have question-wise. I think the biggest thing for the final, I had a student. Story time with Brian here. Story time with Brian. I had a student who was really afraid of failing test 3. He told me, there's no way I can pass it. He had played professional soccer and he had really bad problems with concussions and memory. He said, I can't pass it. I just can't do these problems. And I said, we're going to work as many practice problems as we can till it just becomes like instantaneous. So let's work a practice problem here right now. We'll see a pile of questions while we do this. Let's go over here, work a practice problem. Here we are, practice problem time. So we're going to do a practice problem on finding a confidence interval for the mean. So confidence interval for the mean is quantitative questions. Like we say, Brian wants to know what the true GPA of UT students is. He goes out and samples 100 UT students, and from this sample statistics, he finds a mean GPA of 3.6 and a standard deviation of 0.3. Using a t-statistic of 1.97. It's about, it's 1.9. Find out. Mubot, show us that t-distribution app. Mubot's going to help us find out. Create a 95% confidence interval for the true GPA of UT students. Mubot's helping us out right here with the t-distribution applet. And so when we do the t-distribution has degrees of freedom. Now, the t degrees of freedom is n minus 1. Remember, we did a sample size of 100 right here. So since we have a sample size of 100, 100 minus 1 is 99, and it is 1.98, so 984 to be exact. But I was close enough with this 1.98. I was trying to remember. It's very close to the 1.96 z-score. You do not need to know these. We often give these. So first question, what are the degrees of freedom? The degrees of freedom are merely just a computational thing, and so they let us know which t-distribution we are using. The t-distribution right here is based on, oh, I have it on the wrong screen. Did I not show it over here? There we go. The t-distribution is based on the degrees of freedom we are using. So as we get more and more degrees of freedom, it becomes more normal. Take a look. As we get more degrees of freedom, it goes towards the normal distribution until eventually we see that 1.96. So I kind of think of degrees of freedom are more or less the ability for a distribution to be normal. It kind of carries over theoretically through other distributions that way, but as you increase the degrees of freedom, the t-scores become more like a z-score, and they only converge at infinite degrees of freedom, but with more degrees of freedom, the distribution becomes more normal. Low degrees of freedom, medium degrees of freedom, high degrees of freedom, ridiculous degrees of freedom, and you notice it looks just like your normal curve at that point. With low degrees of freedom, you're going to see a lot of the differences here, the thicker tails and the tighter in the middle distribution. It's because the t is more flattened out. So with that, we know the degrees of freedom are going to be 99. Formula is n minus 1. So that means right here, we need to find and write down our summary statistics. So our summary statistics for this are going to be, we have right here the sample mean, the sample standard deviation, the sample size, also the t-statistic. So let's go ahead and mark these. The sample size is going to be n. The sample mean is going to be y bar. The sample standard deviation is going to be s. That was a horrible s. It's going to be s. And then the t-statistic is t with n minus 1 degrees of freedom. That's just a subscript right there for the degrees of freedom. And it's really easy to remember the one sample t is n minus 1. So one sample t, n minus 1. So 100 minus 1 equals 99, and that's how many degrees of freedom. Let's calculate the standard error. Now the standard error is going to be the formula s over square root of n. So basically the standard error is kind of like the standard deviation, but for means. And we standardize it by the sample size. So the standard error is going to get smaller as the sample size gets larger. And I was super nice to myself here because I wanted to do it in my head. So if you're like, well, Brian, sample size of 100. Interesting, right? Because the original standard deviation was 0.3, and we take over the square root of 100, which is going to be equal to 0.3 over 10, which the whole thing then, I'll put it over here so I don't run into it, is equal to 0.03. So this is the standard error right here. Next, let's go down here further. Why is it going to do that? Sure. Aha, tricked you. And so now, 3, create a 95 confidence interval using the t-statistic. So to create a 95% confidence interval, we need to know the formula. And the formula is going to be y bar, and this is given on the test, plus or minus the z-score, s over square root of n. Oh my gosh, I made an error. Someone's got to call me out on these errors here. T-score. This is a t interval, not a z interval. And so with this right here, we are simply going to plug in our numbers. And you notice we do have the standard error in this, which is s over square root of n. But we just need to take y bar, which is 3.6, which is the sample mean, plus or minus the t-score of 1.98, which would be given to us. And we actually have s over square root of n up there. Remember, we just solved for this. So let's go ahead and plug in 0.03. And look at what we've created. That is the interval. Let's just solve a little bit further here and do 3.6 plus or minus. We'll use the calculator to cheat and solve the answer. So 1.98 times 0.03. 0.0594. And so this interval right here, if we add and subtract to this interval, let's go down a little bit in font size there. This interval is going to be this amount. That is the margin of error of the interval. 3.6 plus this. So 3.66, basically, we'll round it. So it's basically, we'll put the font answer in red. The upper bound is going to be 3.66, basically. And the lower answer is going to be 3.54, basically. We usually have a little margin of error in the answer you can give. So what does this mean? Last question here would be interpret the interval. I am 95% confident the true mean GPA, because that's what we're trying to estimate, the true mean GPA of UT students is contained in the interval 3.54 to 3.66. And this isn't for one student. This is if we took data on every student. Well, we're 95% confident the true mean GPA, like all the GPAs of UT students averaged together, would be contained in this interval. And that doesn't mean like we would know with 95% certainty. Oddly enough, it means 95% of the time our 95% confidence interval will contain the truth in theory. This is just a good, quick example problem right here. So this is what I'd run somebody through. Just be like, okay, here's the numbers. Can you identify the parts? Can you then solve the equation? You know, what do you think I would ask you next? And a lot of people would then realize, okay, we need to interpret the interval. But if you just solve these continuously and you can write your own problems, just changing the numbers, kind of these numbers in yellow right here are the numbers you need to change because they're everything that dictate the problem. The 95% confidence, hey, good to see you right here. The 95% confidence is going to, how's that keep going over the screen out here? The 95% confidence is going to control right here the degree to which we color and shade the interval. So let's go here instead of 95% confidence. Let's go to 99 degrees of freedom. We can change this right here to 90% confidence. And now we don't shade in as much of the interval. We're 80% confident, and that changes the t-score. Any last few questions right here as we finish up about confidence intervals and how to get them? What do we have? Last two questions. Feel free to give them. Let's go back to the main screen. Well, good review of the material we should know and understand. Project is coming up. We'll end where we began with project material. If you have those questions, make sure to email me. Let me know. Let's go back. Say hey to Rick and Morty and finish off office hours. Good luck, everybody. Let me know if you have questions. Talk to you later. Bye for now. Bye.
Morty, we've got to turn the project in early.